Hi there, everyone. Welcome to The Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's June 17th. Do you change the soil in your window boxes and containers every spring? You really don't need to. I don't. Here's what I do. I remove about a quarter to a third of the soil in the container, and I put it in my potting soil bin. Then I add back perlite and compost, and that's it. Any extra potting soil that I have left over in my bin, I can use for new containers. Here's today's Brevities. It was on this day in 1869 that the botanist Edwin Hunt collected the last known specimen of Arethusa bulbosa in the old Oriskany swamp in New York. Arethusa is commonly known as the dragon's mouth orchid, and it's found in the eastern and central parts of the United States and Canada. One of Hunt's former students shared his recollections of his teacher. Mr. Hunt was an expert in the preparation of his botanical specimens, and he was ever guarded in his knowledge of a locality. He did not believe in sharing it if he thought someone would exhaust it, and knew only too well how many years of patient industry he had spent on his collection. And then he recalled, "We journeyed many miles together, and he always seemed 2 inches taller when we got into the woods. He was a very rapid walker, and when on a botanical excursion, it was a difficult matter to keep up with him. I have a faint but pleasant recollection of running at his heels for a distance of 12 miles. And it was on this day in 1871 that James Weldon Johnson was born. He's the lyricist of the song "Lift Every Voice and Sing." Johnson's former summer home was called 5 Acres, and he had a writing cabin that was located on a hill above a brook. Johnson was a founder and member of the Harlem Renaissance, and he wrote most of his famous works like God's Trombones and his autobiography, Along This Way, in his writing cabin on the hill. Johnson also loved to write poetry. Here are some excerpts from his Venus in a Garden. But the fair Venus knew the crimson roses had gained their hue from the hearts that for love had bled, and the goddess made a garland gathered from the roses red. And on this day in 1879, at the Botanical Gardens of Berlin, a monument of the late eminent botanist Alexander Braun was unveiled. The granite pedestal was done by a Professor Adler. The bust of Braun was said to be an exact likeness. Braun was a botanist from Bavaria. He researched the morphology of plants. And it was on this day in 1916 that a photograph of Nellie McClung was taken with fellow suffragist Emmeline Pankhurst. McClung earned Canadian women the right to vote. Today you can explore Nellie's home and garden in Calgary. Although she's known for her social activism, being an author was her day job, and nothing inspired her more than her garden. Her first book was called Sowing Seeds in Danny. It's been compared to Anne of Green Gables. Both books were bestsellers in Canada right away. And it was on this day in 1934 that the University of Wisconsin's Arboretum was officially dedicated. The idea had first occurred in 1853 to Wisconsin's early naturalist, Increase Lapham. But the university didn't actually begin purchasing land for the Arboretum until 1932. The following year, William Longenecker was hired to be the executive director, and Aldo Leopold, who was then a professor of wildlife ecology, was made research director. For today's Unearthed Words, Here's a poem from Emily Dickinson. She wrote this poem in the fall of 1877. She was, like most gardeners in autumn, reflecting back on the seasons, and she made some observations about important growing times during the year. Dickinson never wrote a poem dedicated to June, but she loved to reach back to June in her poems about autumn. To Dickinson, June was sweeter and best appreciated through the amber lens of fall. Summer has two beginnings, beginning once in June, beginning in October, affecting again without perhaps the riot, but graphicer for grace, as finer is a going than a remaining face, departing then forever, forever until May. Forever is deciduous, except to those who die. And here's a little quote from my friend and fellow podcaster, Joanne Shaw, who said this 1 year ago. A piece of our heart is in all our gardens. Today's book recommendation is The Plant Hunters by Carolyn Fry. Most of the plants in our gardens are not native to our region. Although we take their accessibility and ubiquity for granted, we owe a debt to the naturalists and explorers who traveled in search of these unusual plants and then brought them back along with fantastic stories. Carolyn is the former editor at Geographical, the magazine of the Royal Geographical Society. Great book. For today's garden chore, attend to your geraniums. Regular deadheading prevents disease and increases flower production. You can remove the entire flower stalk after the blooms fade, and then remove yellowing or dried leaves from the plant as well. It's actually quite normal for the lower leaves of geraniums to turn yellow as they age. And if they get too leggy, feel free to prune them back a bit to encourage branching. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. When I was researching Edwin Hunt, I came across an article that told how Professor Hunt was collecting flowers for the Hungarian revolutionary Lajos Kossuth. Kossuth was lamenting yet another political disappointment, and he told Hunt how he had turned to nature. Here's what he said. "In this sadness of my poor distressed heart, I was longing for some consolation, and the words of Chateaubriand came to my mind. Happy those who love nature and shall not find but her in the days of adversity." And so I turned to that sole consoler who never disappoints and never deceives. The study of nature confirmed me in what my heart was longing to hope. A mild ray of peace and consolation fell on my sad soul as the cooling balm falls on the burning wound. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.